But since, as was said above, this sacrament is made of bread and wine, it is necessary that those conditions be kept in the bread and wine, so that this sacrament may be made of them which are of the nature of bread and wine. But wine is not called except the liquid which is pressed from grapes, nor is bread properly called except that which is made from grains of wheat. But other things which are called breads, for the want of wheaten bread, came into use to supplement it. And likewise other liquors came into use for wine. Hence this sacrament could not be made from any other bread or any other wine, nor even if the bread and wine were so mixed with foreign matter that the species would be dissolved. But if any such bread and wine occur which are not of the nature of bread and wine, it is evident that by omitting these, the true sacrament can be performed. Hence, since it is not a matter of bread to be leavened or unleavened, but any type of bread that exists is saved, the sacrament can be made from any bread. And for this reason, different churches have different usages in this regard. And both may correspond to the signification of the sacrament. For, as Gregory says in the Register, the Roman Church offers unleavened bread, because the Lord took flesh without any mixture. But the rest of the churches offer the leaven, for the word of the Father is clothed in flesh, and is true God and true man, just as leaven is mixed with flour. However, it is more consistent with the purity of the mystical body, that is, of the Church, which is configured in this sacrament, the use of unleavened bread, according to the Apostle 1 Corinthians 5:7. Our Passover Christ was sacrificed, therefore let us feast on the bread of sincerity and truth. By this means the error of certain Greeks is excluded, who say that this sacrament cannot be celebrated in unleavened bread, which is also evidently destroyed by the authority of the gospel. For it is said in Matthew 25:17 and Mark 14:12 and Luke 22:7 that the Lord ate unleavened bread with his disciples on the first day of the Passover, and then instituted this sacrament. And since it was not lawful according to the law for unleavened bread to be found in the houses of the Jews on the first day, as is clear from Exodus 12:15, the Lord kept the law as long as he was in the world. It is clear that he turned the unleavened bread into his body and gave it to the disciples to take. It is therefore foolish to disprove the practice of the Latin Church, which the Lord preserved in the very institution of this sacrament. It must be known, however, that some say that he himself preceded the day of unleavened bread because of the impending Passion, and then it was used in leavened bread. They endeavor to show this from two sources. First, from what is said in John 13:1, that before the day of the feast of the Passover, the Lord celebrated a meal with his disciples in which he consecrated his body, as the apostle reports in 1 Corinthians 11:23. Hence it appears that Christ celebrated the supper before the day of unleavened bread, and thus used leavened bread in the consecration of his body. They also want to confirm this by what is said in John 18:28, that on Friday, on which Christ was crucified, the Jews did not enter Pilate's headquarters so as not to be defiled, but to eat the Passover. But the Passover is called unleavened bread. Therefore they conclude that the dinner was celebrated before the unleavened bread. The answer to this is that, as the Lord commands in Exodus 12, the Feast of Unleavened Bread was celebrated for 7 days, among which the first day was holy, and especially solemn among others, which was the 15th day of the month. But since among the Jews the solemnities began on the previous evening, therefore on the 14th day at evening they began to eat unleavened bread, and they ate it for the following 7 days. And therefore it is said in the same chapter, "In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the same month at evening. 7 days leaven shall not be found in your houses." And on the same 14th day at evening, the paschal lamb was sacrificed. Therefore, the first day of unleavened bread is said by the three evangelists, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, to be the 14th day of the month, because they ate unleavened bread at evening, and then the Passover, that is, the paschal lamb, was sacrificed, the day of the month, which was the most solemn of all, on which the Jews wished to eat the Passover, that is, the Passover unleavened bread, but not the Passover lamb. And thus, there being no discord among the evangelists, it is plain that Christ consecrated his body in the supper from unleavened bread. Hence it becomes clear that the Latin Church reasonably uses unleavened bread in this sacrament.